Real quick, I want you to get into the shoes of the average American pickup buyer. What do they like? What do they not like? What size of truck nuts would they install? Why does their life-size Tim McGraw cardboard cutout have a hole cut into Whoa. Anyway, the values of the Nissan Frontier are more traditional truck than just about any other on the market. First, Nissan follows, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, religiously. This third gen is really a heavily revised second generation. This doesn't mean that the Frontier hasn't had teething issues, but it does come with some proven bones. It also utilizes the mostly trustworthy VQ V6, specifically a 3.8 liter. It comes with 310 horsepower and undercuts most of its competition. This also means we don't have a turbocharger, unlike its body-on-frame rivals. While many, including myself, aren't scared by forced induction, it is less to go wrong. Now, updates for 2024 include a new hard body edition, which will sit at the top of the spec range and gives you really cool retro styling cues, though interestingly it's crew cab only. And then there's a more premium SL grade as well, but today we're focusing on the base model, which has been the same since 2022. The Frontier used to be the cheapest truck of the land. That's not the case anymore, as they unfortunately got rid of the old 4-cylinder 5-speed manual spec. Here with 4-wheel drive, it is a $35,000 truck. But the Frontier, unlike many trucks, is somewhat regularly priced below MSRP. Briefly, I'd like to thank Royal on the Eastside in Bloomington, Indiana for letting me test drive this 2022. Their staff is knowledgeable and Royal is dedicated to the community. Check them out. For that money, you will have a skid plate underneath, and you will also have halogen headlights, which I guess are at least cheaper to replace than LEDs. You will also have steel wheels and manual mirrors. No, I'm not talking about how they fold. I'm talking about the mirror adjustment itself. And there's not even a little manual toggle on the inside. But you do have power windows and keyless entry with push button start. And the traditional truck buyer usually appreciates additional configurations. And you get plenty of that here with the Frontier. Not only can you get an access cab, which will have a 6-foot bed, you can also get a crew cab with the 6-foot bed. The 5-foot box will limit your capabilities, but there are some nice tie-down points, a dampened tailgate, and the ability for an outlet, though Nissan does make you pay extra for bed protection. On the inside, the layout is simple. The storage is good. I like these little handles here, but like everything is covered in a cheap plastic. Yet that's not really a bad thing because it is all matte finished and it feels like it would be easy to clean. On a usual day, this would be a pretty boring interior, but this excites my inner carpenter. Honestly, even the tech here looks dated, yet it's functional. It comes with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Granted, it's wired, but it also has a surprisingly quick response time, despite a low resolution and unimpressive brightness. We also have analog gauges with a nicely configurable multifunction display, big buttons and dials for the standard AC, and a long shifter. Nothing about the Frontier will ever confuse you unless you spend 20 minutes looking for the non-existent mirror controls. And the comfort levels, they're acceptable. Now, the steering wheel isn't in a horrible place, but that's a good thing because it doesn't telescope, it just tilts. The seats also kind of bother my lower back and they don't come with lumbar adjustment on the base. But that's nothing out of the ordinary for a work grade truck. Getting into the second row, not too difficult, and even at 6'3", as long as the front seat driver has a little bit of mercy, I could be back here no problem, with even just a sliver of extra headroom. While undignified, at least the King Cabs offer 4 seats to help out in a pinch. You can flip up the seats to get a little bit of storage underneath, and you'll have a standard armrest. I wouldn't label it a family hauler, but it's sufficient. When it comes to power though, many truck folks desire more than adequacy. And that's where the Frontier delivers. This does need to be revved out in order to get the power. If the 9-speed automatic doesn't shift down, it can feel pretty dead. But once it does, this thing will hustle. This doesn't really feel like a truck engine. Very little drama there as it gets up to 60 in just 7.1 seconds. Now, this 9-speed automatic is based on a Mercedes-Benz transmission, but Nissan builds it. My experience with it is that it can sometimes hesitate to downshift, but it does have some aggressive gearing and the shifts are pretty smooth. It seems like they've worked out the initial kinks that they had when it was released back in 2020. As you would expect, rear-wheel drive is standard. If you're planning on taking this off-road, it should be a willing companion. This doesn't have anything fancy. Just an optional four-wheel drive system that comes with a 2-speed transfer case and hill descent control. You got 9.5 inches of ground clearance, good off-road angles. If you spend a lot more and get like a Pro 4X, you'll have other goodies like a rear locker, but that's not why you buy the work truck grade. When it comes to capacities, these will max out here in the base model at 6,600 pounds of towing, which is average for the class. Same thing with payload capacity, right around 1,600 pounds for the lightest rear-wheel drive model. Pulling up to 65 miles per hour, the engine is at about 1,700 RPM. There's a little bit of wind noise, a little bit more tire noise, but it does feel solid, and pickup is still good, while also retaining competitive gas mileage compared to its Turbo 4 rivals. Now on a broken back road, the Frontier won't break your back, but it isn't exactly smooth, and nobody was really expecting it to be. This does have leaf springs in the rear, with obviously a solid rear axle. It can get a little jittery. Say you've driven a 3rd gen Tacoma, this feels pretty similar to that. Maybe a little bit less body cab dissonance. While the ride can get busy, the Frontier does a good job of preventing any jarring motions. Just don't come seeking refinement. Now, if you're driving your truck through the mountains, you may want to know how it handles. I think it's a little bit more poised and flat through these corners than I was expecting. Yeah, the steering is numb, and it is oddly heavy at parking lot speeds, but when you start taking it around corners at higher velocities, the weight becomes much more natural. And there's also not a bunch of play in the steering. A touch less clumsy than something like the 3rd gen Toyota Tacoma. I haven't driven the new one, but I will soon. Though its sea vessel turning radius can be a nuisance. And it should, hopefully, theoretically, be reliable in the long term, because the last generation Nissan Frontier was a pretty good truck after its initial 4 years. The 9-speed auto has been the subject of some complaints since its release for the 2020 model year, but after a TCM update smoothed it out and Nissan addressed a rollaway and park issue, the powertrain has been robust. I'm seeing some build quality and infotainment complaints on Consumer Reports. For 2022, Cars.com owner reviews pointed out many of those quality control issues and a poor alternator placement for off-roading, but complaints dropped off for 23. NHSTA reports and CarComplaints.com have basically nothing to contribute. Overall, it's not perfect, but the old bones and fixed issues leave me confident enough to recommend the Frontier to those that prioritize longevity. And if the truck were to meet its demise in mere seconds, it seems to provide respectable protection in the new, more stringent IIHS testing. And you will have autonomous braking as standard, but it's cool to see that Nissan is self-aware enough to realize that Frontier customers may not care about adaptive cruise or blind spot monitoring, so those are optional. This feels like a tough truck. In most ways, it does find itself outpaced by the competition. As a result, the Frontier finds itself in a unique position, one that isn't glamorous. It's like getting your ass kicked and then someone coming up to you and praising you for your durability. With its closest competitors deleting configurations, raising prices, and decreasing the engine displacement, I don't think the Nissan Frontier's approach is to beat all of its foes. Instead, it provides a safe place for those that aren't settling for less, but want less. If you've been looking for a truck's truck, but you don't want too much truck, I'd recommend checking out the Nissan Frontier. Thanks for watching, and as of this morning, thank you for 50,000 subscribers. None of this would be possible without you all. I'm hoping the channel can soon grow large enough for me to get a team to explore the potential, so please subscribe and hit the notification bell for more fun, detailed car content without fluff. Leave a like to help me challenge the YouTube algorithm. If you want some cool apparel, check out my new merch. Follow me on Patreon for an additional podcast, and I'll catch you in the next one. Now, if you're driving your truck through the mountains, you may want to know how it